Good day to everyone out there in YouTube land who decided to watch this today. It is Sunday, May 19th. It's about noon. So this is about 6 hours later than I usually record something like this. But I was able to find the time, and I wanted to share this with you. Because I am excited to share this one with you. This is, again, another one of those splatter western novels. And what little I know about the splatter westerns is this company, which I believe is Death's Head Publishing, originally started dropping these down in like 2020. So everyone was in COVID land when they finally got to print and release this. It seems like a niche or a subgenre in Western horror. So again, you got to take your Westerns, then go down to your horrors. Now it's a splatter Western of the horrors, and it goes on from there. I don't know if there are other Western horrors out there that are not splatter. Maybe there are. Might be worth looking into after I finish, this whole stack of books that I got there that are currently my list of splatter Westerns. Um, the closest I even came to knowing about anything close to this at all was when I was a kid reading comics about 25 years ago. There used to be advertisements in either the back or in the middle of the comics, which was advertising Nintendo's NES had a game called Splatterhouse. And they had a thing, and I'll even pop the ad. I found it online. I'll pop it up here somewhere, either here or here, which actually shows like a guy putting on a red mask. And the gameplay was practically you're turned into like Jason, and you're going after these other monsters with chainsaws and machetes because they kidnapped your girl or something like that. So pretty much take the Mario storyline and turn it inside out and show its innards. Boom, splatter. So anyway, I happened upon it, and as I said before, and I'll say it again now, it's what I didn't know I was looking for. I'm embedded in this stuff now because it's just you don't really see this. It's not usual. Therefore, sorry, it takes things from a different perspective and lays it out. But I'm a huge fan of storytelling. So show me the storytelling and show me with these details, and I'm in on it. So I was able to go out there and actually buy like this whole series that you see there. I got them on the cheap too. People in used. I use points on my credit card, that kind of stuff. So got the whole thing there, and I will go through them one by one, and I will share them with you as I do. So far, I've gotten 4 books down. Well, 5 if you want to add this one to it, and the 4 comic books that came out. And if you're curious, I even have Joe's book reviews on all of them. Maybe I'll throw them down below in the comments because I've got a ton of space there. I can fill it up with some of that. But take a gander there if you haven't already. Otherwise, without further ado, on to the show. It's actually interesting because originally I was not going to do a splatter western next, or at least not this one. I'd queued up the book named Dust, which Redditors have out there as being a damn good one. I mean, it's almost unanimous. People saying Dust is a fantastic splatter western book. And a lot of these books are kind of autonomous of each other. Except for things like For a Few Souls More, which is a sequel, they're mainly have nothing to do with each other. But I can make a small little side excursion because there's been Easter eggs where they do talk about Dust in other books. In this one, For a Few Souls More, which is a sequel to The Black Magpie, there's a scene where our main character is dealing with like a supernatural, almost ghost or entity, however you want to think of it like. And the name of this person is Lorelei. And I earmarked a page here so I can actually read it to you. And I usually earmark pages in books when it has like a detail or something I want to go back to someday. My earmarking is, or my dog earring, should I say, is a permanent bookmark. I can find it later on. And it's so funny too. I love that Sean Connery movie, Finding Forrester. And he has an interesting thing to say about this. There's a comment where he's talking to almost a new protege, this kid, and he has his bag and he picks up a book of his, and Forrester sees that Jamal had dog-eared the book, and he says, "Oh, you dog-eared it. Show the author a little respect." I was kind of taken aback by that. I was a little upset about that because, like I said, I do that as like a permanent bookmark of the page. So, without further ado, I just want to talk about one of two examples that dust is mentioned in other books. So, Lorelei bent down and placed her hand on Amaya's leg. Then color flooded into her cheeks again. Leaning against the black wood of my stage, I watched her. Been a while since dust. I called you there. Who called you now? Who's holding your reins? So, this book might take place after Dust, but there might be an appearance by this character doing things in that book. And again, I said it, so it wasn't even the first time I saw it. I've got way over here. Hunger on the Chisholm Trail. And there's a character that just kind of like rolls through town. And this reference is a little bit longer so you understand how it goes, but I'll say... So the man is Carl, I think it is. And he says, of course, you seem to have a thirst. The road does that to a man. And James, the one who we're talking about here, is... Where is this? James asked, looking out the window as Tracy opened up the shop across the street. They both stared at her as she raised the blind on the door. She looked back at them and raised her hand to wave hello. But after she saw the look on both their faces, thought better and quickly moved back further in. Duncan, you're in the Indian region, smack dab in the middle of the Chisholm Trail. James stared at him, his mouth moving soundlessly. Oklahoma, then, he finally muttered. It was Carl's turn to look confused. 1,000 questions ran through his mind. Before he could pry one from the pack, James smashed his fist down onto the study table. I need to get the Dust. I got business to settle there. Dust? James looked at him with a gaze that nearly froze the blood in Carl's veins. Dust, Texas. Carl screwed up his face and thought. There's so many new settlements that spring up. I can't say I recall any Dust, though. Describes most of them, though. Neither man laughed at this little half-hearted joke. James sat down on the empty chair and cradled his face in his hands. Carl watched him warily. He knew the look of a man with a mission, and of a man lost. In his experience, that made for one dangerous combination. What's your business in Dust, if you don't mind me asking, Mr. D? You wouldn't believe me if I told you, Mr. Beck. You'd think I was crazy. Which way is Texas? Carl smiled. You may find yourself surprised at what I would believe. But if you head out and take a right and keep going for a mighty long spell, you'll reach Texas. Just follow the Chisholm Trail. John D. stood and offered his hand again, which Carl shook. I thank you for the drink and the directions. I'm off to find Dust then, as soon as I can. I have gods to kill. And with that, he turned and left. Carl sat staring longer after the stranger had turned and begun to walk down the street. Now, it's kind of like the person is mentioned one more time in this book, but it's like, oh, wait a minute. So someone probably appears in Dust that happened in here first and then moved on to there. And then whatever happened in that might possibly be referenced again in the new book that I'm talking about here. So, these are Easter eggs. I love these kind of things. I mean, I watched the entire Lost show when it was on TV and was so deep into it that just even like a face on a milk carton or the mention of another company had links to like one or two other things. So I love that kind of shit. And I can't wait now to read Dust knowing it's been mentioned at least twice in two different books by two different authors. So it almost gives you the, even though they're autonomous, do they share a universe? You know, are we going to see some kind of splatter western Avengers appear way on down the horizon? And that would really get the blood and the supernatural just plastering the walls if that ever happens. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. It does turn out, like I said, the author of Dust is Chris Miller. So he didn't write Few Souls More. He didn't write Hunger on the Chisholm Trail. So I almost imagine like there's a card game with all these authors just around, just shooting the shit. And then one gets an idea. He goes, "Hey, do you mind if I throw my dude in your story, like on his way over there?" He's like, "Sure. You want to throw mine in yours?" And they just sit back. It would end. It would be like a real life version of those old Reese's peanut butter cup commercials where you got your peanut butter on my chocolate, and I got my chocolate in your peanut butter, kind of a thing. All right. For A Few Souls More. Okay, according to the back of the book, by the way, A Few Souls More is a sequel to the splatterpunk The Magpie Coffin. Okay, it's the second part in a trilogy. So it obviously says, I didn't know there was going to be a third one. When is it coming out? What will it be? And despite my best efforts, or my casual efforts, nothing's on Google that says, oh, this might appear whenever. So, I mean, for A Few Souls More, if I look at this, came out in 23. First one came out in 20. So, a couple more years from now, hopefully we'll see it. I know when I bought all the splatter westerns behind me, I had heard that two of them were actually sequels of each other. One's The 13th Coyote, which is from Christopher Triana, and it's actually part of a trilogy. Okay? And it's more werewolf theme in its splattering. So, it's also, by the way, the largest of the books. You can almost see it on the bottom, the thickness compared to the others. I think it comes in just shy of 500 pages, which is a colossus compared to most of the ones that are like 100 and 150. So, now the sequel had already come out for that one too. That was called The Ballad of the Werevixens. So going into that one, I know it's a trilogy, so I dropped it to the bottom of my stack, because I want to hope that the third one does get released by the time I'm ready for it. And then I can go bam, 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 all three at one time. Now, I'm not entirely upset that I read this sequel not knowing there was going to be a trilogy, but even the fact that there's a trilogy might be an afterthought. So it's like maybe the first one came out, was well received, he already built a character, makes another one, and then, like anything else, hey, maybe I'll make a trilogy now. But that's just my vacuumous, ignorant opinion of just saying what could have happened. Who the hell knows? But hey, end of the day, we'll get 3 of these. So, it's high on my plan that Dust will come next. I might do a side quest before that and do a book with no name because it's in the genre, but it's an odd shaped book and it was on top of that stack and it was almost falling off, so I want to do it just for my OCD stacking purposes. Alright. Now that I've gotten through all those side stories and everything else, let me talk about For A Few Souls More. Okay? Granted, we're already 14 minutes into this, so I'm sorry if you had to gut through the rest of that, but I like entertaining stories to tell myself. So this one, they clearly show you, it's at least 6 years since the closing of the last one. Okay? And it does start out with a gruesome prologue. I mean, the details, the occurrences that are in it, by the end of the prologue alone, it will really test your nerves to say, do I want 240 more pages of this? Or am I going to stop now because it's a little bit too much for me? That's going to be a reader by reader, your taste, your preference, your stomach. So, I mean, hats off to Willie Young for setting the bar that high right away he does a pretty decent job of keeping it there throughout most of the book, and does go above it as well. And it's a truly good testament that I'll give him good credit, that he didn't do one of those things where this bloody, gory action of the prologue is actually almost the climax of the book. You know, it happens often enough that they do one of those, here's the intro chapter, and then 3 weeks earlier. So, and I hate that stuff. In fact, I love the fact that Rick and Morty brought it out in one of their episodes, saying, like, it's horrible. If you got a good book, write your book. Don't go to the climax and then come back and fill in before that. I mean, they entice you with the hook, and then you realize that it's just that, you know, it's going to happen so much later that you have to go through too much real estate to even get to that scene again. You know, and it can be often filler. Like, how did they get in that situation? Now tell me who they are, where they come from, ba-da-ba, boom. A good example that popped into my head about that kind of hook and 3 weeks earlier and what have you was that one show, Damages. And Damages aired in about 2007. Rose Byrne, Glenn Close, and others. Okay, but those are the two main names. And they set the hook early in the opening of the first episode, where you get an elevator and the elevator doors open up and you see the lovely Rose Byrne in there. But you see she's all full of blood and she's highly distraught, and you're almost surprised that she's still standing. And then it fades out and goes back like months before when she started the job in the company whose elevator just opened. So it's like, ugh, when are they going to catch up to that? You know. And this is a television show, so you might not even see that scene again for a dozen episodes. So, I mean, that's a hook. But it can definitely get boring fast, but it'll keep you going for the first episode, if not the first 3. So, 3 weeks earlier, not a fan. For A Few Souls More, did a prologue and kept going. So, now our main character. If you're new to it, our main character has done this, like, deal with the devil thing. Alright, he's got an amazing pistol, but he must deliver to hell like 10,000 souls before he can redeem his own soul. And when he even did this covenant, he did it with his brother. So both of them have a gun, and both of them have a debt of 10,000 souls. And it imbued them with the ability that they cannot be killed by a bullet. So they can pretty much walk into a saloon, open their gun, and bam, 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 just start shooting people. Okay? And 2 things are happening here. Number 1 is, they can't be shot, but they can be killed. They can be knifed, they can be hung, they can be drowned. So they do have to be careful what they do. They just know that they're not going to get shot if they decide to draw iron. And the second thing is, even though they can't be shot and killed, they can buy one of the other guns. So this guy's brother could kill him with his gun. So now it adds that little ominous feeling that's always in the background. Will my brother turn on me eventually? Should I kill him first? Now, the gun and this debt of souls can travel. If you do happen to get the drop on our main hero. Hero's a hard term to use here, but our main character. You can steal the gun. Now it's your gun. And you've got the debt. And this gun, it kind of sort of talks to you. Like, you can be in a room with people, and it will start this itch in your head, like, pick me up. Shoot everyone in this room. Get them all. And it's only after you would do such a thing, and your bloodlust is completed, that the gun goes quiet for a while. But it's always asking you to pick it up, and boom, boom, boom. So, something to look forward to. Now, we get the impression in this book that Salem Covington, that's the name of our main person. It's pretty cool, right? Salem Covington might be near the end of his Debt of Souls. Because it's 6 years since the last book, and he was doing it for years before that. So he's killed a lot of people. They don't really give you an exact count, but they tell you it's coming close. And any one now might be the last one. You don't get that, like the counter in the comic book Spawn, which shows you how much of the necroplasm Satan energy is left in the Spawn before he just becomes a hell demon. It's all you know is this is almost done. And who knows? Maybe that's what the third book will be about. Pretty interesting if it is. But let me try to get back into this now. So it starts out with a graphic prologue, and the guy that's doing everything in the prologue is this really maimed guy. I mean, Covington left him for dead years ago. In fact, kind of spared his life, I think. But he shot out his eye, took his hand, and he's kind of back for revenge. So he's performing some form of, I'll just say, black magic. And the sole purpose of what he's trying to do is to kill Salem Covington. Okay? He reanimates the corpses of prior deaths, people that Salem killed, who were just true killers. But now that they're back in their zombified way, they can hardly be killed again. So it's like he's drawing up this army to go after the guy that did what he did to him and his family. And by the way, you got all these other people too, which are going to come after you, hopefully to kill you. But in the meantime, it's going to be something else. It's almost like the first book where he did a revenge story to get the 4 people who killed his old mentor. So in this one, though, it's just a little bit different, but it has that same feel to it. So in my non-spoiler way that I like to prefer, to talk about these things, let me just say, Covington gets involved with a woman who was looking for him to help her out with something else. Turns out all these undead hombres and such have been just going to towns and taking all the women from them. Oh, by the way, it's not just these 4 main killers. There's a whole bunch of cult followers with like red hoods and such. So you know where they are along the way. And they're just going to town. They're capturing women. They're mutilating them. But they're keeping them alive. And they're trying to get as many women as they can get. Because there's something about the woman, and they impregnate them, that helps this black magic in the town where the bad dude's trying to get our antagonist. Or protagonist. One of the two. But the dude. So, in this one, this story, you do have one of those, like, how do we get from here to there? And there's people along the way that are trying to kill us. Oh, and by the way, there is the place that the women are at. We can save those women. But there is also the place where the guy wants to kill him. So, you're rushing to the Death Star to both save the Death Star and make sure you don't get killed. So, and by the way, there's like hundreds of these women that are taken too, so there's some stakes to this. And along the way as he's doing the adventure, you get your cool saloon gunfights, traveling on a paddle boat casino at one point, where you meet other people as well as some of these undeads. There's a section where he stops these other guys who have captured a wolf in a trap, and they're just torturing the wolf. So he tries to free the wolf, and then the wolf befriends him and such. But one thing I will say, there's a lot of times where that magic, that mystery, just keeps on coming back. I mean, every couple chapters you get another introduction to something else. There's rituals involving odd ingredients, which they actually do discuss of why this is important. Just traveling for other realms, and maybe you go there just to get information or get some advice, or just to point their compass to get them in the right direction. And all of these are done in the passive, I need something manner, but they're also sometimes done in the truly offensive capabilities that they can afford our traveling troupe. But the writing details, oh my god, they are amazing. I mean, at one point, he impales this undead shade to the ground, and he like impales the intestine, one end of it, to the ground, and lights fires hoping it will escape in one direction. And while it escapes, it'll just keep unwinding itself in the bottom of the body as it crawls for life. I mean, whew. Word after word tells you about this, very detailed like. Another scene, he also demands the tongue of someone who crossed his path. And he tells his friends, I'm going to this saloon, and I better have that tongue before I leave, or there's going to be a hell of a lot more problems. And the guy's like, I know who you are. And turns to his friend, and pulls out a knife. And they do it. And then they even tell you later on why the tongue is symbolic and what its capabilities can be. So let me just tell you, you go along for a ride, and it really doesn't get dull. Now, I know this last part of what I talked about doesn't really give you the best descriptions maybe, or a synopsis of the book, but all the elements are there that if you piece it together, you know the story. I'd say, pick one up today, enjoy the read. I mean, it does necessarily have, you'd have to read the first one. You kind of have to read the Magpie Coffin before you read this one. They're not that James Bondy, any episode's fine, you don't have to know about the history. You can't just pick this one up on its own. Almost like you can pick up, though, like say you're doing the John Carter series, and I have a lot of them on audiobook here. Them you can pick up whenever you want, because it tells you whatever you need to know. But there are details in the first one that are important here, so read the first, then read the next one, come on back. Alright, that's going on out there right now. I might have to go take care of that. So let me just say, up here somewhere is my banner. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you read this. I hope to see you again real soon. I got 2 other books I'm almost done reading right now, actually. One is kind of like a parenting book, and one is a different splatter western. We'll see which one I finish first, and then I'll come back here and tell you shortly afterwards. But in the meantime, I hope you enjoyed this, and happy reading. Bye-bye now.